Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Unlocking L. Today we have a very special guest with us, Sister Malika. She was a high school teacher here at ILM, as well as a coach for our Miss team. She holds a Bachelor in International Relations from Boston University and is now a JD candidate studying at Harvard Law School. MashaAllah. We are so excited to have you on today.
Thank you. Alaikum salam. I'm so excited to be back.
So we know that you competed in Miss during high school. Tell us about your experience. What did you compete in? What were some of your favorite moments?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. So I competed in Miss Nashville's regional competition, and I loved Miss growing up. It was like the time to show out school spirit. A lot of times we don't have that chance in Islamic school because we don't have like the football team. There's no like homecoming and whatnot. Alhamdulillah. But Miss was the time to like come out and show your school spirit and just really bond with people all over Tennessee from the Muslim community. We did a lot of retreats after Mist with the same people that we would go to Mist with that we met. And yeah, I think it was just such a great community building experience and super fun to compete in. I competed in different competitions like spoken word, original oratory, extemporaneous essay. I did knowledge test. I did debate, soccer, basketball. Just short film was one of my favorites. We were always producers, but it was just lots of experiences over the 4 years that I got to compete. And I think my favorite moment really was just meeting people and getting to go out with my team late at night with our little chaperones who would take us to IHOP. And it was just a nice time to bond with our classmates and our sisters.
Your experience as a competitor sounds amazing, but I know you also coached for Mist. How would you say your experience is different as a coach from a competitor?
Yeah, I think as a coach, you get a broader experience with Mist because you get to dabble in more than just six competitions. You're literally coaching students in every category, doing so many different competitions. It's definitely not as in depth, but much broader. And I think it was really rewarding to just talk to students, hear their ideas. They're so creative, mashallah, and then see them execute their ideas and win the competitions or even just participate and just be proud of themselves was just a very rewarding experience.
Okay, well, after high school, we know that you went on to study at Boston University. What steps did you take to be able to achieve that goal?
Yeah, I think just my school really emphasized the ACT for us from a very young age. I was studying for the ACT since the seventh grade. So the ACT, just really getting a high score in that, I think opened a lot of doors for me. I was able to get a full ride, alhamdulillah, and I think it would not
Inshallah.
have been possible without getting a top, like really high ACT score. And then really just following your passions and anything that you enjoy and just excelling at them, like what you guys are doing with Mist. If you like a category, like really push yourself to do your best in it. And it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's something that you're passionate about and you're able to do it to your best of abilities. That's what college admissions are looking for.
Wow, wow, mashallah. Well, okay, you also went to an Islamic school growing up. How do you think that affected your journey? Do you think that helped, or was that harder for you to go out of state for undergrad?
Yeah, I think that there's a huge misconception that Islamic school makes it harder to get out of the state or like go to a top university. But I actually think it's the opposite because at Islamic schools we're much smaller. Our teachers are literally like our second parents. They care so much about our futures and our success that they pour themselves into that. And we have such smaller classrooms. Like I said, our ACT teacher, he was actually just our math teacher who was volunteering to help us with ACT prep, and he was doing that on his own time. You don't really get that other places. And I think that it also really strengthened my conviction and my knowledge of our principles and our morals and made me super unapologetic in being Muslim. So when I went out to out of state schools, it was like I was confident in my identity and I didn't let outside factors influence me in a negative way. So I really think that going to an Islamic school was a benefit and it did not stop me in any way.
Well, okay, if you could go back to your high school self, what's one piece of advice you would give your younger self? Is there anything you'd do differently?
So I don't think there's anything I would do differently. I think like everything that I did or that has happened all led me to where I am today, alhamdulillah. And I think the one advice I would give myself is to stop planning so much and like stop trying to hold so hard onto whatever I plan and just accept the ebbs and flow of whatever Allah brings your way. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the greatest plan for you. And sometimes you don't see that in the moment because you were so stuck on this one plan that you created for yourself. But we can never plan greater. So
Wow. You graduated from BU with a degree in international relations. Can you tell us, like, did you know you always wanted to do law? And then can you also walk us through your journey of applying and preparing for law school, like the LSAT?
yeah, so I actually was a pre-med student at Boston University. In high school, I did a lot of science competitions. I was always good in STEM fields. So I kind of just was pushed towards the medical path. And I was really passionate about this issue in my home country. I'm from Niger originally, and we have a lot of uranium extraction, and it leads to a lot of health issues with the radioactivity. So I thought that public health and medicine was the way to tackle that. And then in undergrad, I was really interested in how international systems related to how things play out. Of course, colonization and is what led to the exploitation and just the neo-colonial rule of France. And so as I was looking deeper into it for my senior thesis, I decided to do international relations for that reason, in addition to the pre-med studies. And my senior thesis was looking at the health outcomes, but I realized that it was a lot more than health. The issues that were being impacted was like corruption, a lot of colonial education systems. Because of this, there was just a lot of disparities that came across sectors. And so I realized that the issue was more lack of rule of law. We had so many laws there in place to regulate the extraction to make sure that the health outcomes were not happening. There was just a lot of falsifying of impact reports and not a lot of surveillance. And so, yeah, that is what shifted me towards law, because I realized that if you have a proper legal foundation, everything else in society could run smoothly. And so, how did I apply to law school? So, because I realized this too late in the game, it was my senior year of high school that I realized I wanted to do law school. I was applying to a fellowship that I did for a year overseas. And while I was doing that fellowship, I was taking the LSAT. So, I was studying for the LSAT while overseas and took it remotely. And I ended up taking the LSAT 3 times, trying to get as high as a score, trying to replicate that undergrad like advice I gave you guys to score high in the ACT. So I was trying to score high on the LSAT. I did score decent, but I didn't score as high as I wanted to. So I knew that I needed to supplement my application as best as I can. And so I focused a lot on my essays, and I spent months writing those essays and made sure that they could showcase like really my reason for wanting to go to law school. And honestly, I never expected to go to Harvard at all. I was aiming for a regional school. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the gates for me, and alhamdulillah, that's how I got there.
Subhanallah. Well, now you finished your first year. You're almost done with your first year at Harvard, right?
Yeah.
Has it lived up to your expectations?
So, I think a lot of times lived up to my expectations. Sorry, I'm thinking. I didn't really have many expectations. I think I expected to have a lot of resources and to have like rigorous academics, which it has lived up to those expectations. I think I expected the administration to care much more about academic freedom and like freedom of thought and expression and diversity of thought. That did not live up to my expectations. Administration is very tough on certain issues that affect especially the Muslim community, like the Palestine exception that we like to call it. Anything to do with Palestine, they will shut down. If you replicate an event of another group and you just write Palestine on it, it will be shut down. And I think that is not something I expected from such a high caliber institution that prides itself as being this prestigious academic institution where so many ideas are cultivated and solutions are solved, or like world problems are solved. So that did not live up to my expectations. So that resources did live up, but the actual like censorship did not live up.
Well, everyone has dreams of going to a massive Ivy League school like Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest misconception about these Ivy League schools, other than the
no, yeah. So I actually
censorship?
think that I don't think that would be a misconception, because I think we kind of have seen how a lot of universities are responding to protesters. And so it was kind of expected. I just didn't realize the extent it would go to. I think a huge misconception, though, is that the student body itself is also cutthroat or like very competitive. Like you go there and everybody, you're like fighting for your life, trying to get to the top. But I think a lot of people at these schools already feel like they've made it where they're trying to get to. And I found a lot of camaraderie, like with a lot of organizers. We have this slogan, "We keep us safe," and it's like very much a wholesome community. A lot of people are super likable. Everybody has such great ambitions, but they're really down to earth. And I think that was a misconception that like it's so cold, a cold culture and cutthroat. I know there's been a lot of reform over the years to encourage this kind of community, but they did succeed. I do think I found a lot of lifelong friends.
That's great. Well, okay, let's move back to MIST. This year's MIST theme is about transforming knowledge into action. Can you share a moment in your life where you turned your knowledge into action?
Yeah, so actually, just this year, as a 1L at law school, a lot of people encourage us to put off practice organizations until our second year once we finished our hard 1L doctrinals. Um, I didn't take that advice. I decided I would pour more energy into extracurriculars than academics because I came there to learn how to practice law and I didn't want to waste a year not practicing. So I joined a student practice organization called Advocates for Human Rights. And as I was taking classes like civil procedure and taking reading groups like Earth Rights, I was learning a lot of techniques people use in advocacy and human rights advocacy and litigation. And we were working with a nonprofit that's also a human rights organization that is working on figuring out ways to hold accountable companies that are engaged in enabling war crimes. And that's an issue that I went in really wanting to contribute to in any way I can. I felt like I needed to have some kind of action that I was using my knowledge that I was gaining to help the cause. And so this was the perfect opportunity. We've been working on like building memos and literally transforming the knowledge that we were learning simultaneously into action.
Wow. If you could give one piece of advice to high school students on how they could turn something they know into something meaningful, like what would it be?
It would be always remember your why, or like ask yourself your why and figure out your skills and apply those skills to your why. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be a doctor to save lives. You can save lives in other ways. It doesn't have to be an engineer. You could be an artist. Parents will hate me for saying this, but art also transforms society, changes social behavior. The art movements of the Arab Spring, they helped so much in the movement. And so it's just choose your skill that you want to focus on and that you're passionate about, give it your all and excel in it. Always excel in whatever it is you choose, and you'll be able to make meaningful contributions to whatever cause it is you want to, as long as you really are passionate about it and you really care about, you know, your why. So yeah, don't fall into the trap of society and push yourself to do your best in whatever it is you want to.
Jazakallah khairan for coming. Jazakallah
Yeah,
khair for listening. We were so happy to have you here.
I was so happy to be back. Love seeing you.
Love seeing you too. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Assalamu alaikum.